Welcome to the Expert Network Team podcast,
where our goal is to inform and educate our listeners on matters related to finance, legal, insurance, accounting, and other interests that are of personal and business nature.
We hope you will find our content useful as well as entertaining. The Expert Network Team consists of Carl Frank of A&I Financial, Mike Miller of Miller and Associates CPAs, Jeff Kromendijk of Security First Insurance Agency, and I'm Nathan Merrill. I'm an attorney at Goodspeed & Merrill.
Together, our independent team combines our expertise to provide you insights and solutions, some straightforward, some profound, for real-life opportunities we see on a daily basis. We hope you enjoy the information contained in today's podcast and find it useful. If you'd like to learn more or desire to meet with any of the Expert Network team members in person, you can contact us at info@expertnetworkteam.com. That's info@expertnetworkteam.com.
We encourage you to take advantage of a free consultation with any of our team members. Just mention this podcast when you schedule your appointment.
Now on to today's podcast. Welcome to the Expert Network Team podcast. Today we have in the house Carl Frank of A&I Financial, and we also have Jeff Kromendijk of Security First Insurance Agency, and I am Nathan Merrill with the law firm Goodspeed Merrill. And today we are going to be doing part deux, as they say, of a prior podcast where we talked about essentially the stages of business maturation and where that leads us. And the natural presumption, which I'll begin with, is that building a business, building a career leads you to retirement. And so what we're going to be talking about today is a bit of a paradigm shift. And it also coincides with the podcast that Carl and I did together also just prior to this, dealing with a reboot of our lives coming out of COVID. So not that we necessarily have to reboot our lives relative to our long-term plans, but perhaps rethinking how we consider the end of our careers and what we're working towards. And perhaps I'll first throw this out. Maybe we can do a quick recap of some of those stages, Jeff. I know you're looking at the chart, but we talked through essentially you start at the early stages of business, a startup where you struggle to make money, and why don't you talk about the progression and where we're working towards?
Yeah, thanks, Nate. To bring everybody back, several weeks ago, I think we aired this podcast and kind of left everyone hanging with, probably potentially what the stage 6 and 7 business would kind of look like. But just to remind everybody, and those of you who are business owners or have been, these are going to be maybe real stark reminders of what life was like, but also fond memories too. I think of that. I think of some of these stages and 18 years ago, starting up a business and all of the blood, sweat, and tears that involved. But, according to Chuck Blakeman's book, Making Money is Killing Your Business, he would propose that there's really 7 stages to business. And really stage 1 and 2 are pretty similar. One is referred to as a concept or a startup. And also the second is survival. And both are really driven by sales. The business owner is actually really generating the majority of the revenue. Most of us were probably solo entrepreneurs back then, right? Mm-hmm. And we were kind of doing it all. And then we kind of woke up one morning and realized, wait a minute, this thing is sustainable. Like this thing has some legs. And yeah, I'm getting tired, but I'm pretty energized, and wow, what would it look like to maybe begin to build this thing out a little bit, and maybe hire that first employee or maybe that first salesperson to start carrying the load for us. And so we move into stage 3, which is subsistence, and really feeling like we've got something sustainable, we've got something that's a going concern, and we're gonna make a run for it. right? I mean, like there was some doubt in stage 1, there was some doubt in stage 2, and but now like this thing's legit. So let's see what we can do here. So we'll work hard and move it towards a stage 4, which is stability. This is a point where I'll never forget just having a few employees, making payroll, paying the bills, probably being profitable for the first time, and not doing everything on my own, but still having a hand in absolutely everything.
Well, I was going to pause you there and also talk, because we talked a little bit about the boxes. Like, if you think about all the different boxes, the things that are getting done at the company, up through stage 4, and I think this is referred to as like also the treadmill stage, where you're like, feel like you're on the treadmill. You're always moving because you're always jumping from one task to another. You're in every box at that stage. And that's unfortunately where a lot of businesses stay. And we can spend a lot of time just talking about how to get out of 4 into 5. But for the purposes of this discussion, I just think we have to assume that at some level, people, whether intentionally or accidentally, find a way to get out of the treadmill if they're going to build a successful business at all, and they move on to 5 and 6.
Yeah, exactly. So in stage 4, we're making money. Actually, we're finally, maybe buying that house that we've always wanted. We've got the hot tub. We've got maybe the 3rd car in the garage or something like that. But we're really busy doing it. I mean, we're super, super busy, and that's that treadmill, Nate, that you're talking
that
about.
I'm on? Yes, you're right.
Well,
that's correct.
Not that you're on.
That is true, though.
So, yeah.
It happens when you bill by the hour.
We do make the leap then at that point in time and realize that we can't do this on our own for very much longer. We need to start building a business that will actually make money while we're not there, or while we don't have our hands in absolutely everything. And so we move into stage 5, and it's really a stage in which we're finding success, but primarily by walking around, Chuck would say, really leading and overseeing, and still involved. We're still very much a part of the strategic planning, and even the operations with regards to direction and so on and so forth. But we're not necessarily killing ourselves anymore by making that every sales call, or making every sale, or making every chair, as Chuck likes to refer to in his book.
And isn't this what he refers to as mature business, where you can go away and it still makes money while you're on vacation? That's the true test of whether you've arrived at stage 5?
I think you're right. Yeah, we've all celebrated our business maturity date, as it would be defined here in this book, Making Money is Killing Your Business. And that's exactly right. It's a business that's going to actually continue on with or without you, at least for a month or 2 months, maybe 3 months. And it actually grows without you. So that's a really good definition of stage 5. We then move into stage 6, and we talked about this a little bit last time we got together, which is a stage of significance. This is a stage where now really the owner is giving vision and also guidance, but really depending on that C-level leader that they've put in place, or leaders that they've put in place. And so this gives the business owner really an opportunity to do a lot of more visioneering, as opposed to being in the business on a day-to-day basis. And it really is the last stage before succession. At that point, where a business owner can really decide what retirement or succession needs to look like. And that's kind of where we're at today.
Yep.
I think we'll spend some time there.
So on that note, maybe we start, because I'm a word person, being a lawyer and all, let's define amongst us, kind of come to a common understanding of what it means, or what the traditional idea of retirement means. And Carl, you deal a lot in this area, so why don't you start us out?
Cash out and move on. Right, you quit the business, and you go and do what you want to do. And we joke, you're out on the golf course, right? You're doing those types of things. For me, maybe it's skiing or climbing mountains. For other people, it might just be needlework, or reading books and spending time with your friends. And that's the traditional path that people envision for themselves.
I called it kind of a transition to leisure. I mean, that's often what people envision in retirement is you travel the world, eat good food, go shopping, do golf, whatever. But you've worked for some reason, and again, I don't mean to suggest that anyone who's chosen this path has chosen poorly. It's just we're defining the traditional idea of retirement, which is they've worked all their life for this moment that they're now going to toggle it to something that's entirely different than how they lived the majority of their life. And I think
that might not be realistic.
Yeah, let's go back to where the traditional definition of retirement came from, which is really the industrial age, right? I mean, we go way back, and I think the concept there, the idea was that
so like late 1800s or early 1900s,
I would
or
probably
even
even say right after World War One. Probably.
Yeah, okay.
Where really we in America here saw a mass migration out of the country side and fathers and sons working side by side in the fields to really going into the cities and working in factories. And so the industrial age was born. We had to rebuild America, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what was going on.
And well, more Europe in the 40s, but yeah.
Right, exactly. So and that's where corporate America came in and said, okay, hey, here's a concept. You go ahead and give us the best 40 years of your life, all right? And we'll give you whatever's left. And the reality was when people would retire, I mean, they might have 5 to 10 years after they worked. And, the idea was, hey, we'll give you a pension and, so on and so forth and make sure that we take care of you. Well, it was a great deal for corporate America and for the big corporations. But yet it was not really the way we were designed to live. And so, clearly I think I'm stuck because I'm kind of a product of a father who grew up in the industrial age. And I've acquired many of those thinkings and thought processes. And so I have this date in mind and this idea of what it might look like. But I'm learning, hanging out with guys like yourselves, that there's actually an ideal work lifestyle that could be even potentially more fulfilling if I were to take that well into what I would have defined as being my retirement years. So I don't know.
And just adding to that, I mean, when you think of whatever that date is, whether it be the traditional 60 or 65 or something like that, absent you were working heavy labor in a factory or construction or something like that, it's not like your day-to-day office job has taken a hard toll on your body, unless depending on how you feed yourself and what kind of exercise you get. But nor is it in most cases where it's caused significant decline of your mind. Like, you still know a lot of stuff. And as long as you've kept up with advancements in technology, you're still useful on a computer. You can operate a smartphone. I mean, you're not useless. And the whole definition of retirement is to take out of service. You're applying it in the industrial age concept. You're finding you have a machine that is not up to date. It's worn out. It's not productive. The ROI just isn't there. We're going to pull it out of service. And so, like you say, in the traditional early industrial phase where you spend 40 years just in the grind and you get to retirement, you're like, you can barely get out of bed in the morning or something. That was the assumption. But now you're hitting 65 and you got a lot of good years left. Your mind isn't gone. You still have a lot to contribute. And so the question becomes, why then take yourself out of service? Why remove that value from either your job or your business or the youth who need that seasoned experience and leadership, as you put it? They need it. I mean, I think they need it.
I think you're onto something there about the taking out of service. It's not that type of retirement that I think anybody wants. I think we want a reboot as opposed to a retirement that imagines myself much more excited about starting new.
Yeah, retiring to something.
Yeah,
it's changing the way you work as opposed to not. And that's why I say it's no longer the retirement to leisure per se. you might make more time for the ski trips
And
up to the
maybe
mountains.
that's your priority and your work is on the side. Or maybe the type of work that you do is just a lot more fulfilling.
Well, it's the leadership role. It's because I'll be honest, I don't want to sit at my desk in my 60s and 70s grinding out documents day by day, but I'd love to be able to take my 30, 40 years of legal experience and teach and train and guide a team of attorneys. That's the type of firm I'm trying to build, where I can elevate myself to the point where they have access to my wisdom and experience. I'm not trying to elevate myself to some, pontific status, but
yeah, that's meaningful and it's fun and
yeah,
it's something where
let's
you're
face
passing
it, that is
on.
what happens after 40 years. I
Right.
mean, you do become
I've seen it
a
before.
sage,
I've been here.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and people are going to be coming to you for advice just naturally.
Generals are the ones who have fought a couple of battles in their lifetime. They're not
Right.
the fresh guys fresh out of West Point.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And doing that reboot and doing something that you're moving into can be really fun. In fact, it's not unlike, Jeff, you made me think earlier in our conversation today about what it was like to start that business, right? That very beginning, because you're starting something new, a lot like that. You're starting something totally new when you go into retirement, where you don't have to do all the work that you had to do that got you here. And you've got to figure out what it is that means the most to you.
So here's the real opportunity in this, and I think this is where it gets exciting, is giving the next generation the opportunity to not have to do that. Basically finding a way in your own leadership, in your own company, to basically, and that's where the succession plan comes into play, I think, is you now have this asset, you're providing leadership to your next generation of employees, and have them, and I say this at my firm, everybody starts at ground zero here. There's always opportunity for growth. There's always opportunity to make the firm grow. You don't ever have to think that because you don't have to grind it out at the same way I did doesn't mean you can't grow the firm the same way we did. And so it's giving them the benefit of your experience, your effort, to now take it up a level and stay engaged, participate economically still, so that you get kind of that residual off of all that investment you've put into the business. But that's the rethinking here, is rather than the cash out, rather than the walk away, you sidecar it in a sense. You stay engaged, but just at a less hands-on level. I think that's the
Right. Ultimately, what you've done there, Nate, is created a business that you don't want to walk away from. It's not taxing. It's not something that you're waking up and laboring to do every day.
right.
You've actually created something that really builds into part of your overall enjoyment of life at that point in your life. So, I like that idea, and I think that's what Stage 7 really speaks to here specifically. Oftentimes Chuck will refer to it as, really being the visionary, but probably being more of the board member, right? Who's maybe his picture or her picture is up on the wall. Not that any of us would put our picture on the wall of our businesses, but it's that concept. It's we know who that person is, but we don't see them very often. But when we do, wow, we're inspired and we feel led.
Yeah. And we've all incorporated, I think, this word into our paradigms. But to get to that Stage 7, I think you truly have to have an abundance mindset. You have to be willing to share your success with the people who keep
Absolutely.
the endeavor going. For a business to be sustainable, it has to exist of its own inertia. It can't be constantly prodded and begged forward by the leader. Everybody has to believe in it and engage in it and participate in the success, I think.
There's so much wisdom there. I think you also have to be willing to be flexible and be creative and be willing to sit back a little bit while they're taking the lead from you. And that can sometimes be hard for a small business owner, especially somebody who's one of the founders, to do, right? Because at this point, you don't need to be doing all that work. And you see that they're about to make mistakes and they need to make these mistakes on their own. you can probably find ways to guide them so that their mistakes aren't dangerous to anybody, but they can experience it on their own and grow this thing without you. And they're going to be coming in with so many ideas and new technology and new ways to do business that you haven't had before. The right leaders are going to be pushing you.
Right.
And you'll never stop learning.
And the important thing there is to engage those future leaders early on enough in the process. You know, we've talked a lot in our different business development groups of the above the waterline, below the waterline concept, which is allow people to make decisions that impact the company above the waterline early on in their development. Those are the shots you can take that won't sink the ship.
Yep.
And then they can mature their way into the below the waterline decisions once they've proven they have good judgment and they understand the business and that they're properly invested in the outcome to make good decisions. Because if a decision, good or bad, doesn't affect them, it's hard to trust that they're properly considering all the circumstances around that decision. If it's a winner, great. If it's a loser, it doesn't hurt them. That's a bad position to be in as a decision maker. You want to have consequences to decisions. And so I think getting them engaged early on, helping them have a proper construct around decision-making, ability, consequence, accountability, that sort of stuff.
And I can envision, I mean, none of the three of us, I think, have a business where we're there. We're not the stage 7 for the three of us, right? We're still very active in our businesses and the current management and the current doing of the work as well. But I can imagine that it would be very different, Nate, for you and what you're going to find inspiring to be at stage 7 than it is for Jeff. And I would imagine, Jeff, it's very different from me as well, that what I want to do that's inspiring to me might be really enervating to you. It might really be something that you're like, oh, yuck, I don't want to be doing that.
Right.
And this over here, this is what I'm really good at.
Well, that's why we need to rethink what retirement is, because we can't have a single definition for retirement anymore. Retirement needs to actually, I think, be expunged from our vocabulary altogether. It's work
really
optional,
there.
basically. It's or financially independent or whatever it is that's a priority for you should be your definition of that R word.
Sounds right
it's
to me.
It's a bad word.
Yes, I like it. And that vision of quitting this and having no place to go is depressing.
Yeah.
But making a significant impact, that's exciting.
Yeah. Did you have something you wanted to?
I don't.
Okay.
No, I was just making sure we covered everything here.
Well, and I'll just give one anecdotal example of kind of how I learned this before I realized I learned it. Was watching my grandfather, who was of the greatest generation, fought in World War II, worked a career in the military, but then retired from the military, and he worked for the VA. Then after the VA, he worked for the March of Dimes. And I don't know that he was retired from the March of Dimes more than 3-4 years in terms of being on their board and helping in their organization and that sort of thing before he died. So he was active, so we were talking about this. It's not that you have to stay at your job for the balance of your life, but you have to stay engaged, because what happens to you when you disengage is the muscle that is your brain, the muscle that is your body and spirit begins to atrophy, begins to decline. When you're not engaged in what the human design is, just like muscle, it
you've lost.
Yeah. So
you've lost
again,
a lot.
that doesn't mean you have to be working, engaged in a job, business, that sort of thing. But you need to keep challenging yourself. You need to keep moving your experience forward. Stay engaged in life, because
it can be fun. It can be rewarding.
It can be healthy. I mean, it can truly be a life or death situation for some people. When I've talked to some attorneys who retire, and they're used to being at the top of their game, the most important people. They retire, and it's like their identity is gone.
Mm-hmm. It's so hard. It's so hard. We have to redefine who we are.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to figure that out while you're working than to suddenly decide you're going to flip the switch and magically know it on the other side of it. Very, very true. Well, guys, I think that's a great closing anecdote to a wonderful journey that I think we'll have many conversations about here in the future. I love the tools that Chuck Blakeman gave us in making money is killing your business. All four of us on the Expert Network team are students, and Jeff is our resident teacher as well for this group. If you want to learn anything more about this, reach out to any one of us, and I'd make a plug for Jeff. Reach out to him first. He's our guide.
Thanks, Carl. Thanks, Nate.
Thank you.
Create a beautiful day. Thank you for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed the information we shared.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please feel free to share it with someone else. And join us next time.
If you want to meet with a member of the team, please contact us at info@expertnetworkteam.com. That's info@expertnetworkteam.com.
If you have special topics you'd like to hear about, please reach out to us and let us know at the same email address. Again, that's info@expertnetworkteam.com. Thank you for joining us, and have a great day. Thank you for listening to this podcast. We want to remind you that listening to this podcast does not establish a client-professional relationship with any of the firms represented, nor does it constitute legal, investment, or accounting advice, and the views are those of the professionals only.
Investment advisory services may be provided through A&I Financial Services, and securities may be provided through Genios Wealth Management.